Oh, wrong window. Morning. That was a perfect start to the day, wasn't it? Um, there is no issues so far, fingers crossed, with the broadcast, which is great. Um, and as you can see, my beard is growing lusciously at the moment. I've been out doing a few shoots for things over the last couple of weeks, and yeah, it's been fun and hectic and busy. But I did manage to finish off Desireen's portrait. So there it is, which we've been working on the last couple of weeks, and I am going to work on another one after this week. I'll be drawing a lady called Leslie. So if you want to be a part of this project, basically what I'm doing is, if you're interested, you can send me on my Facebook page, Lee Boyd Artist, private message just with a selfie pic, just via Head and Shoulders, somewhere where you feel comfortable and one you're happy with. And what I'm going to do over the next couple of weeks is draw those portraits and put them into a larger picture. So you become a part of a collective, which is kind of, I'm trying to think of the right word or phrase to kind of not celebrate, but to kind of make a note of COVID and the reasons why we started ArtCat, and all the weeks that we've done this, and people who've joined, and if they're interested, have sent a little picture along, and I'm drawing them, and it kind of helps with the demonstrations as well. A lot of the things that we all face in our drawing, we can answer with this demonstration. That might not be the thing that you're drawing. You might be drawing something from still life. You might be drawing landscapes. But a lot of the drawing issues that we come across are the same problems. So whatever it is you're drawing, it's the same issues over and over again. Now, I opened it up to everybody and said, listen, what would you like? What would you like me to cover? What would you like me to draw? I think we've got a few people in already. We have Alex, Desiree, Michael. Michael, thank you so much. Sent me a lovely message and about a gift that he organised for you, and I really do appreciate it. That's so kind of you. Alex asked me a couple of weeks ago about drawing some of the features: the eyes, the nose, the mouth, and the ears, etc. So that's what we're going to work on today. We're not going to be doing a specific eye or a specific nose or a specific mouth, because they're all very much different when you look at each, I mean, all the individual faces. What we'll just quickly do is show you the picture as it is in a minute with Desiree's finished portrait. So Desiree, hopefully sitting comfortably. Hope you like this, otherwise I'm in trouble. So yeah, I'll just flick you over to the other drawing cam. So yeah, look, it's like a slow reveal, isn't it? You now hid behind my face and your picture. But if I zoom this out a little bit, there we are. There's your picture. As I say, it's slightly out of skew because of the direction of the camera, but hopefully you can get to see what I was talking about the portrait. So each week each couple of weeks I've been finishing a portrait and putting them into a large picture, so there'll be almost like a patchwork of everybody that wants to be involved. So yeah, if you're interested, send me a selfie picture on Lee Boyd Artist Facebook page, and I'll have a look at it and see if we can get it onto this one. So how have you all been this week? It's been good. I'm just going to slip over a blank page that we're going to sketch on today. So yeah, I hope, Desiree, you're happy with that. If not, maybe private message me. Or you can just tell me what you think of it. I don't mind. I was quite happy with it because I think I've captured kind of that little glint in your eye. You got a great sense of humour, and yeah, I think I caught that aspect of it. I didn't know you could look so good. Oh, well, you do. Looks family. Thank you very much, Michael. Really appreciate that. So, another great drawing. Thank you very much, Alex. So we have to say goodbye to Desiree's picture here. So I'm just going to click on this one, and I'm actually going to change it over now to a range of eyes. Now I'm going to start off with this one. I'm going to cover sort of the eyes, nose, mouth, and ears. And I was thinking, right, everybody's eye is different, and it's one of the characteristics of people when we're drawing them. It's a kind of the character, the connection we first look at when we look at a portrait is the eye. It's often the first thing that trips people up. One, we've got two of them, and 9 times out of 10 you'll draw one really well, and then you'll panic about the other one, and then you won't necessarily place it in the right place. So we can talk a little bit about the basic proportions of the face, some of which you might already know. So forgive me if we're kind of going over old ground that you may have learnt or picked up on before. There's some basics there. I've also got a little model with me. Don't panic. I'm going to flick down and show you this. This is something I made. You can see him there. There we are. This is something I made in a sculpture class run by the Tannic Creative Suite, and it was a sculpture class. And it was about how to make a skull. Now, I did it because of the anatomy of it, and it certainly helps kind of understand how eyes work and fit inside the head. So when you're drawing a face, certain things you need to take note of when you're drawing an eye. Now, it's not to say that you can't abstract it. I'm thinking of things like, there was a film called Big Eyes, which followed a lady's career from the 1970s, and she did all these quite stylistic, cartoonish style people with huge eyes, quite manga-esque before manga became a thing. And in the film, I don't know, I haven't followed the history of this, I don't know how true it is, but in the film, her husband was like an art dealer, Svengali type, and he took over and pretended that he did them. But all the time she was like working away in the background, and he was becoming quite notified for this style of work and getting celebrated for it, and she was being marginalised and sidelined, but she was the person doing the paintings and producing them all. And she ended up taking him to court and divorcing him and winning the court case and things. So you can play with scale and proportions if you are aware of it, and if you know that's what you want to do, you've got control of it. When we're starting out, often when we're looking at a face, we'll zoom in onto detail. We'll zoom in on doing specific things, like we'll forget the structure of the head, and we'll just want to do the eyes and nose and mouth, because that makes a face, that makes the characters. And it's often the structure that goes around with it as well, but there are some basic things we can cover. Alex, we could start with the eyes, given the mass situation. Yeah, basically how we think we can sense a person's mood for the most subtle things we don't even know why we're noticing consciously, subconsciously. Absolutely. Obviously, when you're wearing a mask and you can't tell if somebody's smiling or not, if you look at their eyes, you can often tell there's a slight smiley eyes. If somebody's sad, there's so much subtle subconscious suggestion. There's a lot of alliteration there. In the eyes and the features, about how just a small nuance of a gaze or a glance or the positioning of the eyes and where they're looking can often convey an emotion that you're in control of as the artist. You can decide how to pose the people that you're drawing to emphasize a certain aspect of them. Are they looking directly at you? Is it a secretive thing, like you the viewer and me the subject matter are in on a little secret and we know about something else? Or is it more confrontational, where it's looking directly at you and it's more, I'm not going to be ignored? I just realised that I've got like a little screen off the side of the main lens, so when I was looking over there I wasn't looking at you. But the difference is so subtle that if I slowly glance away, literally a centimetre away from the screen, my gaze and thoughts might be conveyed differently than if I look straight on. My facial features don't change, excuse me, but my direction of gaze is the thing that conveys the message. So it is very, very subtle. What I say to you is look as much as you can. Try to observe how, when you assume an emotion in somebody, what is it you're looking at? and often it's other secondary things that emphasize it, and it can be body posture, it can be positioning of the head. If you think of Princess Diana, when back in the 80s, when she used to sit quite coyly, put her head down like that, very demure, and excuse me, and she'd look out almost through the top of her eyelids at people, and it was very sort of coy, and you could tell almost like the anxiety and the shyness that would come through. It wasn't just her eyes doing that; it was everything else in body posture. So, if you're wanting to try and convey a certain emotion, do think about the other elements that can help emphasize it as well, which will help get that across. But as I say, I'm going to click on a picture in a book called the Charles Barg Drawing Course. Is this image? Done. Oh, wait, this image is huge. So I'm going to shrink it down a bit. Now, I'm going to put a link up to this book. This is a traditional book that a lot of ateliers would use, both the turn of the century and all the way through. Modern ateliers now still use it. In this book you have drawing plates. Basically it's like a print on each page, and it would be like an exercise book. You would copy each page in this book to advance your drawing knowledge. Now you can just go through it like a photocopier and not really understand what you're doing, and you can get a very good likeness by copying, and that's great, but it's to understand some of the things that they're doing in the book. Now, as you can see, there's a lot of pages of eyes. They're all the same eye, basically, looked from different proportions, but you can see certain elements of how things are structured, which is one of the reasons why I've got this head. If you can look at the second row down, third one along, basically it's on the right hand side of your screen, second one down from the top, the eye is looking off to the right hand side. So I've got a model set up looking off to the right hand side, and you can see how far back the eye is actually set from adjustment from the nose, because we often make that mistake when we're drawing, to draw it almost on the flat and forgetting that the head is actually a curved space, that the head actually goes around. So if I spin this around a little bit, I can move all my keyboards and things out of the way without dropping them. This is where it's all going to go horribly wrong this one. I'm going to end up dropping something. So as we spin him around, on the other side of this, I've actually got sculpted in an eyeball, but you can see how far it is actually set inside the cavity of the skull, this eye socket, and around that the musculature of both the cheek, the eyelids and the eyebrow. And by the way, this is what we do to keep it warm. I totally forgot. This is just a normal part of our household. We have one of my sculptures dressed in a Christmas hat, and it's not that we put this on just for Christmas. We actually leave this on all year round as well. So I take this off. You don't really need to see that right now. If I pop up my other glasses as well, because that'll help me see. So a little bit more of an instruction this morning than it is me waffling on about just draw the line. But this hopefully get you to understand, when you're drawing eyes, faces, noses, mouths, etc., what it is you're actually doing. Now, remembering that this is a three-dimensional shape, it's a round curved space, the skull. It's not straight and flat like a piece of paper, so you have to give the illusion of a curve, the depth, and we can do that with light, noticing how light it is on one side of the head and how that light slowly goes into shadow around the other side of the head. And you might get, even if I just hold my hand up here, reflected light So I'm bouncing light off my hand onto, well, I'm actually bouncing off pencil onto the side of the face. So, you know, if this was a person stood next to a wall, and the wall was, say, white, this is a bit of a card as a demonstration, and this was a white wall, but the light is coming in from this side. The light can bounce off the wall and still light up this side of the face, so it's not completely dark. So you can play around with the lighting of your face. Even if you're taking your own reference photographs, think about how you can compose the light to make it a little bit more dramatic. We've all done that thing of holding a torch underneath your chin and lighting it up. And it looks like some sort of horror film. If you want something a little bit more subtle, you can play around with the light to emphasize that. You can use darker tones to dull down some of the light, to take the reflectiveness off of it, so you're not getting a light cast from a lighter surface. So you can play around with all of these different things to emphasize mood, and make it more dramatic and more contrasty and things like that. So you can see how much muscle there is over the skull, creating the eyebrow, creating the cheek, and how thick the eyelid actually is, and the top eyelid actually is, but still how far back the eyeball is actually set, and how little you can actually see of the eyeball. Now, if you think about this whole space has an eyeball in it, an eye socket. Obviously the optic nerve goes through the back and into the brain. And you can see how far back that goes. When I turn it around sideways and I put my finger in it, how far that goes back into the skull, almost in line with the back of the eyebrow. You know, you've got an eyebrow bone just here, you probably feel it on your own face. A good way of learning the structures of the face is to actually study your own. It looks a bit weird, so maybe do it in a room by yourself, but start to feel your own face, and you can start to feel the structures of it, and you start to realize, all right, that's where that back of the eyeball actually is. Oh, I can't believe it. Camera's gone off already. I thought I was going to get at least half an hour out of that camera this morning. Bear with us just a second, I'll hook this back up. There we go. There we are. Good. Back up. 3, 2. Oh, maybe a little bit. 1, 3, 2, 1. Hang on. There we are. Good. Yeah. There. Back. So yeah, you start to feel the own structures, and then if you can feel that bone on the side of your head, just before your temple, you get like this large ridge, and this is the eye socket here, just on the side. There's probably a medical term for it. I haven't studied it to that level. I know a lot of artists do just know automatically the Latin names of all the skull structures and things. I just call it the bony bit on the side, part of the eye socket. And you can tell that when you put my finger into his eye socket, it's coming out the back here somewhere. So how deep your eyeball actually goes. And then when you actually look at somebody's face, you can suddenly realize, all right, if that's where the eyeball actually is coming out back there, how much of that ball you can actually see. I'm going to spin him around a little bit so you can see a little bit more of the face there. So when we look at the Charles Barks picture there, he's broken it down to simple structures of, you can't see the entire eyeball. So taking for example that one on the right hand side, you can only see a small element of the eyeball, and it's actually turned into a triangle. I'm just going to quickly sketch that out, and I'll take you back over to my page. In fact, if you want, I'll take you to the drawing page whilst I'm sketching that out. Yeah, there we go. There you go. So here's my eye. You can see how far sort of this eyelid comes up above it. It's again, it's a very generic eye. It's not trying to say all eyes are like this, because they're not. There's different nationalities have different facial features, different ethnicities. This is a very sort of generic Caucasian eye, a hint of the nose. Maybe it goes that way a little bit more. The bottom of the eyelid, and then going over to the cheekbone there. But you can see, if this is the curvature of the eye, this is how little we're actually seeing of the eyeball itself. It's only a thin sliver. Imagine getting an orange and cutting out that kind of shape, and then you'd expose that white pith, and you're leaving the rest of the orange. That's basically all you can see. It's just a small segment of an orange. Another way of looking at it is if you get, which is probably a more fun way, if you ever get a Terry's chocolate orange and take one of the segments out, that's about as much of the eye as you see. And we put an awful lot of emphasis onto it. And one of the issues I find where people are starting off, one, when we're growing up, there is a thing where, oh sorry, morning Angela, didn't see you pop in, hello. When we are kids, we are aware of things around us from birth, and one of the first things we connect with is our mother or father's face and their eyes, and that's what we connect with and see all the time. So as you start to develop things, kids will naturally draw, you know, a big head with big eyes, and you know, and then if it's mummy, she's got eyelashes like this, and then a big smile because mummies smile like that, and then a little tiny nose, and then she's got curly hair comes out the top like this. So we kind of like simplify all of this, simplify it all down, but we notice that the eyes are big because that's what we're mainly focused on. That's all that we really concentrate on, is that the big eye. As we develop it, we want to control the shape of the eye a little bit, and what happens is we tend to get this almond shaped thing happening like this, where we put the eyes in, and eyes tend to stay like this kind of shape for a long period of time. The problem is that's kind of the basic shape. We can see it in Charles Boggs' picture there. Probably you can get the best perception of it at the bottom one, right in the middle. But even that isn't like an almond shape. If you do have a look at all those pictures, we do realise it's more angular. It's more structured than that. Even if you've got one that's looking kind of straight on, it's much more kind of curved and lined in that way that it's almost like a squashed 50p shape, and that you don't get this sort of sweeping line which just makes a perfect arc, because we've got folds of skin, we've got eyelids, there's a thickness to the eyelid as well. We often just draw when I see drawings being done, that's it, that's all that happens to the eyelid, but we forget about the thickness of the eyelid before we actually reach the eye. It's actually, if we were to build this up a little bit, that would be the thickness of the eyelid, and then we've got the tear duct, and then we've got the eyelid over there. Now the thickness of the eyelid is quite important because it casts shadow. If you were to look at this, we would cast a shadow of the top half of this eyelid, which helps us get the sense that it's not just around that way, going around, flick back to my skull. I say my skull, I don't actually mean my skull. There we go. There we go. So, remembering it's round that way, but it's also around that way as well, going around and over and down. This is all curved. Remember, it's a ball basically. Inside this eye, so there's going to be a lot of flipping around on my camera this morning. So inside this eye, if you excuse my little childish drawing here, inside this eye, you can imagine how big the eyeball actually is. And off the back of that, you've got the optic nerve and things, and the muscles that kind of help move the eyeball around. Inside here, you've also got the pupil. Now, when you look at people's faces, if I scarily look into the camera, I might take my glasses off for this. There. If I look into the camera here, just so you can see my eye, what you can't see is the top part of my pupil, and you can't see the iris, full circle of the iris. And often when we're drawing, especially something from the front like this one, we have a tendency to try and draw, knowing that there is a pupil, to draw a perfectly round pupil in, but that's not reality. Actually, a majority of faces that you look at will have a partial part of their pupil showing, like that. You notice? And what I suggest is, if you can draw, to help you find the location of that pupil, if you draw the whites of the eyes in, you find the edges of the pupil, and you don't necessarily see, I'm going to draw these lines in a little bit heavier, you don't necessarily see the full entirety of the whole iris. I might need to rub that smaller. Oh, there goes the pencil. You don't necessarily see the entirety of the whole iris, but thinking that that is a circle, you start to realize, oh, okay, I was going to put my pupil in the middle. Now if I was to do that in the space we can see, that would be the middle, but remembering that we can't see the full circumference of the iris, that we start to realize, oh, hang on a second, that's where my iris goes, in here. And obviously, depending on how much light the person is looking at, will make the iris contract, so the pupil contract or expand, and how light can hit it as well. You'll see highlights in different places. But what we can do now is we start to add that kind of shadow cast from that top eyelid onto that whole area, and remembering that the eye is a round space. So depending on where the light's coming from, so if I look at my eye there, you can see how my eye is lighter on this side than it is on this side, because the light is actually coming in from this direction, striking this side of the eye and travelling around to the other side. I'm trying to put myself in the eye as we do this, so it goes from there to there, but it's travelling in the circumference, it's going around an edge, so it's going to might be lighter here, and as it comes down it might be slightly darker on this side. There's a tone to the iris, so we can put that in, but generally it's going to be lighter on this side because the light's travelling across it. Now as we looked at the top of the eyeball itself, if I draw, say that this is just an eyeball looking straight up, you have the cornea, which is a slight dome effect thing sitting on top of the eyeball. If we can get this in, this around a little bit more so you can see that. There, that's better. Sorry Lee, I can't see the drawing. Your eye was covered by the pixel on the right. Sorry, yep, there we go. I just realised that as well. So what I was saying was, this is where the iris is. If we were to place the pupil just in this shape, it would be too low. We place it where the iris is, because we can't see the full iris in the eye, and it moves, it makes it look like the iris is further up. The top bit is going to be in shadow, because generally light falls, unless you've lit it from a specific angle, say lit from the ground up, it might be a slight reverse. But in general, if you look drawing portraits people being walking around and things. The top half of the eye is in a slight shadow. If the light's coming in from one direction, one side of the iris is going to be slightly darker than the other. So if I make that dark as the pupil. Again, these are very sort of scribbly, quick, sketchy drawings, but I'm following the basic structures of an eyeball. We start to see the thickness of the skin of the eyelid, depending on the shape of people's eyes, the curvature of their eyeball, and where the eye socket is positioned. The eye itself doesn't sit. Or if I go back to the skull, I can show you. The eyeball itself doesn't actually sit perfectly round in the middle. It's actually up a little bit. So there's more cavity under here for the eyeball to sit in than it is. It doesn't sort of sit down into that as much. It's kind of held off there a little bit. So this eyeball shape is slightly off center to the actual skull. So when we look at the eye on here, we'll notice that the eyebrow ridge is actually closer to the top, like the center of the eye, than the bottom of the eye orbit is. So the distance from the top of the eye orbit to the center of the eye is closer than it is from the bottom. It just kind of sits up into the cavity space. So if that's, try to do the camera, if that's the cavity of the eye orbit, the ball kind of sits up into it like that. It's kind of held in place with muscles, etc. Just slightly offset there. So depending on the structure of the eye, but say this is the eyebrow ridge, and remember it's not only going around that way, it's going around that way. So a good exercise for this is if you get a ping pong ball and put that in light and get used to just drawing a ball. It starts to help you form shapes, tone, and things like that. But the eye itself is just a ball in a socket covered by skin. But you've got to think about the layers and how the eyelids go over the back of it as well, where the eye socket is. So even on my skull there, which you can just see here, it dips in a little bit. So you'll take account of that when you're drawing the inside of the eye, that the turn is slightly sharper than the outside of the eye, because the outside of the skull is further back. If you're looking at it straight on, this seems like a tighter curve than this one. It's because as the skull goes around the back, it exposes more of the side of the eyeball. That's why when you put your eyelid there, you can kind of feel where your eye is, when you can't really do it from this side as well, because there's not so much space to get you doing where that eyeball turns around. So you got to think about how that ball fits inside that shape. It's not like a perfect round socket in a perfect ball. As this eye socket goes around the head, it's traveling around that direction, so it's exposing more of the side of the eye here. So it's harder to get into the side of the eye on this side. Hope that's making sense. If it's really confusing, let me know. But this is about how you can render and draw that. So I'm going to flip back to the page. Where's my drawing? Where's my hand? Yeah, there it is. So there's my lovely childish drawing with the almond-shaped eyes, kind of way too close together. And this is something this more generic eye is something you'd probably see more like on a Roman sculpture, or a Greek Grecian or even some like Pre-Raphaelites or Renaissance style drawings, where you start to see them as structures and shapes. Now, as a starting off point, they're fantastic to get your basic shapes and positionings right without worrying about detail. Far too often people are rushing in to start shading and colouring in the eye without understanding scale and how big or where to place the eye. So if this is sort of the eye socket here, I draw that roughly in. So this would be where the corner of the nose is. And this would be the bottom of the eyelid. So you can start to see almost the eye socket itself. So I put the skeletal bit in there. So that little thin bone that comes down across for the cheekbone. All that would be where the eyeball sits in. And it's got to kind of fit in within that shape. So you start to understand how you can fit that ball into that space. Now when we're drawing a normal face, if I draw it down here, see we start off with an oval. You're sort of seeing about a small element of proportions with this. So taking the central line, if this was like a passport photograph and it was looking directly at you, the eyes follow the center of the head. Now when I say that, what I mean is, if you're looking at it visually straight on, if you went from the very top of the head here to the bottom of the chin here and split that in half, that's basically where your eye line is going to be. It's not the hairline, it's not from there, it's actually from here, which in three-dimensional terms is further back, right? Because remember it's going back around the head, but in visual planes, if we look at it on a piece of paper, this will be the very top of your head back up here, and this bit will be your chin down here, and your eyes are along this line. Now as you could animate this, so say for example my character is going to look up, or look at it from a side on point of view, that center line is obviously going to be curved, and if you follow it around to make like a little egg shape, you can start to see, especially on these Charles Bargue drawing books, if you have a look at that top left hand one or the second one down on the right hand side, how far back they're set out from the nose, you start to get an idea about how to position your eyes yourself, how far back they're actually going to be set. So the eyes are actually going to be set back this way. I can't quite see the other one. Maybe get a little glimpse of an eyelash or something. How far out the nose would come out, and this is how we break it down. So eyes go in the middle, between the nose and the bottom of the between the eye line and the nose. Sorry, start again. Between the eye line and the bottom of the chin, you get the nose, and roughly between the chin and the mouth, chin and the nose, you get the mouth. The eyes are roughly, if you went up from the nostrils on either side, you'll hit the corner of the eyes, and the width of this space of the nose is roughly the same width of each eye. And if you went down from the center of each eye, you would hit the corner of the mouth. Now these are basic proportions. You have the eyebrows just above there, depending on how big your eye orbits are. If you followed it out, you would hit the top of the ear. and come down to the bottom of the nose, you'd hit the bottom of the ear. There are lots and lots and lots of books in how to draw a face book, and it will break these basic proportions down. So if you're having problems remembering them, you can Google them. There are plenty of books out there to break down some of these basic proportions. But what happens from this point is we get the placement, and then people automatically do that almond shape. They'll do this. And it's not necessarily that shape that will work. It looks very sort of cartoony and androidy. We start to lose sort of a sense of reality to the face that we might have been going for. Normally you can just shadow in the top lip. You don't shadow in the bottom lip, and what you do is you shade in a little bit just underneath the bottom lip to suggest it. Now again, when we're kids we kind of go, right, lips do this, and they don't really when you look at people's faces, because it's one dark coloured skin on one plane changing its angle. So let's say from a profile point of view, if we look back at this one, where the nose is, the top lip would come up like the filter underneath the nose, and then it would cut back that way. We can still take these lines and loop them back up to give us where the corner of the mouth would be. Everything sort of steps back and slants back a little bit, but everything goes back on an angle. It's very rare that you get a chin that comes out past the nose. You know, this is where people start to go a little bit wrong, where they start putting things in a straight line. So if it's a straight line, it becomes straight out of his face that way. This part of the face starts to drop away a little bit, and you can play around with how much it drops backwards and forwards. Sorry, my cat's now throwing all my pencils on the floor. Hello, good morning. You gonna sit down? No, she's gonna go and play with my pencils on the floor. You can get a sense of the structure of how that, from the top of the lip, bottom of the lip, chin, goes down at an angle this way. It's different for everybody, it's different for different faces. There are different elements and different structures to a female face than there is to a male face. We can look at the eyebrow ridge, we can look at the angle of the jaw. On a male, the back part of the jaw is quite square, whereas on a female it's slightly slanted and it's slightly softer. So you can put elements on here, if it's male or female, to kind of give you a little bit of a guideline, a little bit of a marker in which to start to observe where you should place things to get a likeness of somebody. So as a light, if you're drawing lightly, you can draw the basic shape of somebody's head and not worry about details of their eyes, nose, ears, and mouth, etc., and where they're going to be placed. Get the certain gestural elements of their posture. So if I'm drawing my head and I've got it to one side, I just realised it's really funny because in my camera view it's going that way, and in my monitor view my head's going that way, so I've got like a mirrored effect. Say I'm going to draw my face. So let's see, doing a quick, very quick live self-portrait. Oh, we'll zoom out this way. Hope we don't look like that at the end of it. Hilarious. Inky is just going nuts at the minute, playing with all of the cables and the leads. That's why this is swinging, by the way. She has now found a new toy, which is my mole stick and cable for my earphones. If my head suddenly disappears, it's because she's pulling on it. Right. So say if I put my head, I'm trying to find a comfortable place to code row. That's an interesting one. Right, I kind of look out the corner of my eye here. It might appear backwards from your screen. I'm kind of seeing this kind of shape, and it goes down that way, and then that was the bottom of the beard. It's quite. It's kind of that kind of shape. Obviously I'm drawing in the whole kind of beard shape as well. I can't see my chin, so I'm going to use what I can see. Often people go, oh, I hate drawing beards, you can't see the face. Well, don't try and draw the face, draw the shape of the beard. Oh no, he's got a hat on. Well, great, it kind of just gives a lovely curve and structure to where this hat goes. I can look at the space and thickness of that band as opposed to the proportions. It's almost the same width as the proportion to my glasses, which comes down here. I'm just going to show you this because this is what I have to work with in the mornings. Inky is now investigating the skull. She's moving my mouse around, knocking my pencils onto the floor. It's like when I decided to call it Art Cat, we didn't have Inky, and I love her dearly. Look, this is graphite dust that she stood in. It's now on my leg. Oh look, and she's also not critic. She's into everything, but we love her. Right, so yeah, get back to this drawing. There we are. Whoa, whoa. Yeah, she just fell off the table. So, right, so I'm doing. Is it that way? That way. I've moved my head up. Again, it's kind of good point to kind of take a quick axis point of where you're drawing your face. I think that was it there, wasn't it? And what I mean by that is just like a crosshair about the direction of what's the center and what's the front, where the eye angle is maybe, and you get like this crosshair thing. It just helps you then, like in my case, if I've moved around, just reordering the camera's gone off. Reordering your sitter or composing your person, or if you've knocked your paper out of the ways to put it back as well, just put it back in the right orientation. I now have to reset my camera again. Apologies for this. I wish there was an easier, slicker way of doing it, but there really isn't at the minute. Okay, right. So click on that, change that, and hopefully I will pop back up in a second. Yay! Done. I am getting quicker at it, replacing it. So again, I know I've got glasses on, but I can take a general basic shape of where those glasses are. I can look at my nose as a shape. It's almost a lovely dark triangle on one side. I'll pop that in. But I'm starting to know where my eyes will come in this. Somewhere in there as a central line. So if that's my eyes, and that's the top of my head because I've got a skull cap on, so it is really sort of giving me a lovely shape to where the top of my head is. I know that my chin is going to be around about there somewhere. Even though I can't see it because of the beard, I can play around with the shape of the beard to fit the shape of my face. I can look at how that side of the beard goes off this side. I've got a lovely curve coming on this side, which comes right up. This is a little bit wider. This is all in shadow. In fact, this part of the face is in shadow. There's a very angular line of my cheekbone almost to my mouth there of where my beard is. I've also got the earphones on as well. So I can get a lot of information down relatively quickly by following the proportions. By no means is this going to be a fantastic portrait of me, but you can, if I'm just sketching something down quickly for the first 5 minutes, I'm not worrying about a likeness. I'm finding positionings of things and structure and angle and shape. I can play around with the stylization of the eye once I know where to put it. Even if you just to make a little kind of mark, angular mark of of where my eye is. I'm kind of looking out that way because I'm looking at the monitor as I draw this. This mouse just almost becomes a dark line here. This is all very much in shadow. It's not as lifelike, but what I'm doing is I'm starting to figure out shapes in space. It's going down from the corner of my mouth. This is all in shadow. That corner of my mouth. You can't actually see this at all, so as this disappears, there's a little bit of suggestion of neck underneath here. Now obviously I'll be doing this really lightly. I'm using a 2B pencil here at the moment. I am literally just finding shapes and structures in this, but again it's the attitude of the head I had. A little bit under here, so it's darker on this side of the face, so I'm actually going to go darker with this graphite pencil and just darken this whole side down. I can't even see this eye. These eyelash glasses are good structural devices to kind of maybe find out where the top of this eyebrow is. And then it goes across this side. Maybe we've been too exuberant with those marks. I'm going to take them back up a little bit. I mean, again, even at this point, look, I can use the rubber to sort of sculpt in a little bit. See that highlight on my nose? So let's go down the center of my nose like that. The shadow of my forehead, or shadowed on this side. In fact, this whole area is shadowed, so I can take this all down. This is all just dark. I'll do all that dark. I'm starting to find the size of my eyes in the shape of the overall shape of my skull, my head. Even the hat as it comes across the top breaks about there and starts to get lighter. And I can reintroduce some harder lines to get more comfortable about where certain shapes are. There's a slight darker bit on this side. It curves around to the eye. Now the cat's playing with the curtains, so it's changing all the lighting conditions. Never work with animals. But I actually do like working with Inky, it's quite fun. Never know what's going to happen next. So yeah, let's see. This is a bridge board around there. It comes around there. So you get to see how, quick impressions, quick gestures, if they're done kind of loosely and freely, start to represent the person or the subject matter that you're drawing, and that just takes you to do it quite a few times. If you're not confident about doing it of other people, you can do it of yourself and just literally sit with a mirror or a camera and have it projected onto a TV screen and just draw yourself over and over and kind of maybe do a full page like this with an A2 page and draw lots of different variations of you hold your head, as long as you can see yourself between the image and your hand, and maybe just flick your eyes backwards and forwards and try and see certain elements of it. Where was I sitting? I keep forgetting that. So I'm doing it all back to front here. It's like I'm being all coy. I'm not. I'm just trying to find the angle of my head. Where was it? There. Is that it? Kind of. That was it. So somebody asked me the other week would I draw myself in the portrait thing, and I hadn't really thought about doing that. But I might. I don't know. A couple of people said it looks like the Brady Bunch, and everybody sit together. So even though this is loose, it's starting to feel more like me because of the positioning of the features of my face. I'm seeing a little bit of dark just underneath. Give a suggestion of where my bottom lip is. I'll just scratch that looking. You think I should include myself in a portrait? I don't know. I hopefully get lots of people to join in and won't have to draw me. It's kind of fun drawing other people. Not so much myself. I think this is tighter on this side. So again, I'm not really doing a full portrait of myself here. I'm just kind of playing around with some of those elements we've been talking about, not going into refined detail by figuring out the space and shape and size of objects like the eye, but understanding the structure of it and how it fits inside the skull stops us from making a couple of mistakes. One of them being is where people would draw the eye here, basically, so close to the eyebrow ridge. It's not so much of an issue when you're drawing it full on, face on, because you can play around with shading to get the illusion of this is in the shadow and this is in the light, etc. But if you're drawing it in a profile shot, push the eyes too far forward, it's because we don't understand where they are in the structure of our actual head. When you see them on a skull, and you can have a look at them online, there are plenty of apps you can get on for your phone. There'll be plenty of resources on the computer as well, where you can see, or even just basic anatomy books, how far back the eye is actually sat inside the skull, and how little of the eye you can actually physically see, and that because of age, etc., or skin, or how loose it gets over the eye, or how people's general eyes are, eyelids are a little bit softer on the top and kind of drift across the top of the eye, so it takes away the curve and it turns it into a straighter line. We still get the general line underneath the eye, but there is still remembering this, there is still underneath the bottom of the lid this thickness of an eyelid, and it's that thickness of an eyelid underneath this bit here as well. So these two bits are quite important because they're often overlooked and just turned into lines, and then people go straight into putting in eyelashes, and sometimes you can't even see eyelashes. What it becomes is just more of a darker smudge. You can't, and it kind of blends in together. You can't see the detail of each individual hair, but they're automatically just put pencil strokes in. And those pencil strokes are, my cats are fighting with each other now. Pencil strokes can be a little bit distracting when you're looking at a face. If they've got these big jutty out lines sticking out everywhere, if they are a part of the character in the portrait that you can see, fair enough, put them in. If you can see them, put them in. But don't assume what eyelashes are and put them in that way. And the same thing for eyebrows. Eyebrows are a shape. They're a shadow when you're drawing. They're not an individual hairs. And some people's eyebrows are very prominent. Some people's eyebrows are very expressive. Some people's eyebrows hardly exist. But I've noticed how some people will draw eyebrows and they automatically go in and draw the eyebrows in exactly the same way. Eyebrows are this shape. And you're going to go, no, they're not. What's the face are you drawing? I mean, for mine, you can hardly see them because I hide behind my glasses. But I do have kind of like expressive eyebrows. You can see that. If I'm concentrating, I frown, a very stern frown, and 9 times out of 10 it's because I can't quite see and I'm squinting hard, and it creates these kind of muscle ridges above my eyebrow ridge. My eye socket ridge is here. I'm going to take these glasses off so you see. My eye socket ridge is there, but my eyebrow ridge is above it, and these can move up and down. I can't move my eyebrow ridge. It stays at this ridge of where my top of my eye socket is. Doesn't move. My eyebrows move. So when I've seen people move the entire eye socket to match the eyebrows, and it doesn't work like that. Skin moves over the top of your skull. Your skull doesn't move with it. Okay, it's a solid structure that cases your brain for security and safety. But yeah, you can move features on your face. You can flare nostrils, raise eyebrows. Must be a lovely morning for you, by the way, staring at my face making weird faces. Sorry, apologise. If I put you off your breakfast, I should put a warning on this video. If you're watching this video, please don't have your breakfast. So yeah, I mean, guys, have you got any questions or problems that you're having with faces? I'm going to put a link up to this Charles Bargue drawing book. Now, it is very expensive, but there are lots of resources online where you can get this information. But it's a book that I've got that I have in the drawing classes that I do live. It's an invaluable resource just to explain the simplicities of some of these things. What he's done in each of these drawings, I think you can see that sort of crosshair mark, and it just helps people orientate their drawing, and whether if you're looking at it straight on, whether you're looking at it from the ground up, whether you're looking at it from the sky down, and how your eye will kind of change about I mean, if you have a look at it, that third one down on the left hand side, that's looking at it from above, looking down, and you can't see the ball of the eyeball. You can see a small curvature of that bottom eyelid, and a small gesture of the top of the eyelid going over. That's how far back the eye is actually set. And you can test this out. If you put your finger between your eyebrow and your cheekbone, what you'll feel is your eyelashes, right? If we do this, what you'll feel is your eyelashes, and you won't actually feel your eyeball. And you start to realize how far back your eye is actually set. That it's not sat flat on the face, and then your nose is stuck on to a flat plane. It's actually sat quite far back. There's a small element I was talking about before. Don't think I quite. So I'll do clean a bit of page 8. Yeah, when I was talking about the eyeball and the dome of the lens, the cornea that sits over the top of it, the iris is actually a flat disc there. So this is the eyeball, and this is the dome of the cornea, and the iris is actually a flat disc. This bit here is actually flat. So if you sliced off the top of your round circle and didn't have a cornea, that would be where the iris is. It's a circle of muscles that opens and contracts to create a hole or an aperture, which is the pupil. Light passes through this and strikes the iris and bounces back out. That's why we get the highlights on top of the eye are sitting on top of this dome, and then in a cast also onto the flat space inside the iris. So when you're looking at highlights on an eyeball, often if you get a highlight here, for example, if Inky hasn't lost, she has, hang on, sorry about that, Inky had knocked my pencil on the floor. So yeah, imagine the light striking the eye, reflecting there. It's also cast onto the iris here. Light's passing in the right in that direction. So on the eyeball here, you might get a very strong highlight here, but you might get a secondary light here. It's a little bit more diffused. So this might be the highlight, which might stop you from seeing the roundness of the pupil. So where people go, oh no, pupils are definitely round and black, and I'm going to put those in. And you go, yeah, can you see the pupil? Can you see the roundness and the blackness of the pupil? And they go, well, no, because there's so much light reflecting on it. And go, yeah, that's because it's the cornea that you're looking at, and then you can see the iris, and you can't quite see all of the iris because the light's shining away. So it gives you the illusion of three-dimensionality because you're starting to follow some of these things. As I said, if the light's coming in from this direction, it might be covered by the nose, so the nose might be coming down this side, so this part of the eye might be in a little bit of a shadow, and the light coming over the top, hitting the top of this eye here, might be lighter on this part of the eye and darker here, even though this is closest to the light. This might be in shadow. So you've got to look at it and see what is in the light and what is not in the light, what kind of space and shapes are around the eyeball. It's not as complex as it sounds. Really great to see how you get to, yeah, when I get a likeness, I am just looking for I'm looking for a shape, and I keep moving the shapes around until I start to find, you know, where some of these features kind of map, and where the lines are. I know, do I need to move the eye over a little bit more? That's maybe a little bit better on yeah, the width. Yeah. You know, maybe I need to move the eye over a little bit more because it's drifting out a little bit. That's a little bit more likely, and it might be just a subtle movement. And again, what I say, draw lightly to begin with, because then you can move it around. It's very unlikely that you're going to be able to hit the nail on the head straight away. Sometimes you do. That's great, wonderful. Go with it. The way the light moves over this eyebrow ridge. So it might be darker here, coming out there, might be dark on this side, coming out that side, but I'm kind of following the arc and the shape of the eye orbit. This bit might be really, really black, but because of the highlight I can't quite see all of it. So you can get things to look. I was just throwing in the eye a little bit more there. I was putting more of the shadow in, just underneath the top of the eye, and then really taking it right down to the point where I can't see where a line is anymore. I'm building up the form with the tone, and the lines start to disappear, and I'm left with the object itself. Those are the things that visually capture a sense of reality, if you like. If I lighten this up just a wee tad, just so it's not the same tone as the eyeball, the iris itself. Maybe it disappear a little bit. Come back. So the iris is going to be obviously a slightly darker tone than the cornea, not the cornea, or was it sclera, the white of the eye, and you might just get a slight tonal darkness, just a hint of where that iris touches the bottom of the eyelid. I'm not going to try and recreate a like a really realistic eye. If you want to go into that level, it's the same as drawing anything. It's by taking it stage by stage. What furthermore information can you see? Can you see different shapes? Can you see how one tone breaks across another tone? The different structure of the filaments within the iris. You know, how much detail do you want to go into? The shape of where eyelashes come out. They don't come out at this point. They come out from don't come out from the back of the eye. They come out from the front. If you have a look at the I'll take my glasses off and just show you my eyelashes if we can find any. They're very, very fine. They come out the front of the eyelid. They don't come out the back of it. So when you're putting in lines, you know, they're not just random lines coming out of the eyeball. Here we go. They're coming out of this point here, and often they're not black lines. They might be these little wispy bits of a highlighted line. Might catch a light. They might be heavily mascaraed, so they might have clumped together and into specific shapes. They might have 2 or 3 wispy hairs that have been pulled together to give a certain shape through mascara. You have the tear duct as well. We talked about might have a cat lick coming out like a Amy Winehouse. But you know, whatever, I'm kind of making this eye up as I kind of play around with what the idea of an eye is, I'm not drawing it from a reference. Certainly drawing from a reference will help you an awful lot, because it gives you structure to work from. Every eye is going to be slightly different, and the reason why I put up the generic picture of the Charles Barger, it gives you a good basic structure, but when you look at anybody else's eye, it's going to be different to that. Whenever you draw, see if I did draw Amy Winehouse's eye, her eye is going to be different to any other eye that you draw. It's all very individualistic, but they all have a certain characteristic and a placement. And the placement of the eyes often denotes the character, or gives you an identity of people. And it's the action. So where we're talking about how people might have a position of the head and slowly scrunch their eyes up, this might give you a suggestion that you're going, are you sure? Like kind of inquisitive, kind of unsureness. It's the almost like the body language of the eye itself, the how you animate the eye. You got to think about what type of character you're trying to build in the person you're trying to represent. If you just go with their character, do they have mannerisms that do certain things right? So do they smile in a certain way? When I smile, my eyes disappear and I have these big crow's feet. I have a big grin. If you was to draw my pupils, they're virtually non-existent at that point. So you can't assume what people look like when they smile. You need to kind of see it for yourself, or capture that, record it in some way, make notes, and then go back and do your drawing. Lee, I see that some artists actually put skin and pores and light wrinkles. Is there a quick way to do this without taking all day at it, or is it just patience? I think a lot of that is patience. When you see artists going to the level of skin pores and light wrinkles, and I mean really, really fine light wrinkles, they're not worried about doing it quickly. They're losing themselves to the process, which is lovely sometimes, where you're not worried about an eye. What you're doing is you're looking at the shape of a pore next to the shape of the other pore, and a slight colour difference, and the space between that pore and this pore, and that hair follicle and that hair follicle, and the direction of that hair follicle and this hair follicle, and they'll follow it so methodically through that when you step back, it is a beautiful, very hyper realistic picture of a recognizable face or person, or a film star or something like that. But drawing to that level doesn't necessarily make it a better picture. You still might get the characterization of that person through more simple gestures. It might be more powerful through more simple gestures, but for some people it's a thing that really interests them. The level of observational detail is the thing that really inspires them, and that's their art form. The hyperrealism is their art form, and therefore it's justified, it's valid to them. So I can't say it's good or bad, it's just a different way of doing stuff. But yeah, to do it on that level, it takes a lot of patience, and there's no I wouldn't try to rush getting to it. Getting to the end of a picture, try and see the enjoyment of the process, the enjoyment of just concentrating on the one little pore that you're drawing. Next to this little pore. Don't get overwhelmed by the entirety of the whole picture. My partner does, Andrea, she does needlepoint cross stitching, and there are thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of stitches in the pieces that she creates, and they take her about a year. And she never sits down and goes, oh my god, I've got pages of stitches to do this, thousands and thousands and thousands of them. And she doesn't sit there from beginning to end and stitch her way all the way through, which she does. We'll have a conversation at night time, we'll be watching a movie, or normally she likes watching the crime channel, and she'll be stitching. and she'll be doing a couple of stitches and then have a conversation, doing a couple more stitches, and it's that kind of slowly catchy monkey, taken step by step, and eventually the thing's finished. So don't worry about the speed. It can take all day if it needs to take all day. You can work on 2 or 3 if you get a bit bored, so you can flip over and you can do a bit of another person, you can do another bit of another character, so you don't get stuck doing the same thing. You might be at different stages and different pictures. So maybe have 2 or 3 going at the same time so you don't get bored too easily. By doing it and then getting yourself involved with the process, you'll start to enjoy it, and then you won't be worried about the time. And the patience will come. Eyes are difficult. Alright, I was trying to do Jack Nicholson, but his eyes to great evil effect. I just can't get them. Hyperrealism is the least of my problems, mind you. Yeah, when you're trying to get a likeness, again, don't try and draw Jack Nicholson. Don't try and draw Jack Nicholson's eyes being evil effect. Draw the shape and position of them. Look at the basic shape of the eye. Is it too far up? Is it too far down? Is it too far to the left? Just to the right of it. Until you get the positioning of things right, don't start going into the detail of them, because once you go into the detail of them and you realise that the eye is a little bit too high, you won't move it. Or if the eye is a little bit too big on the left hand side, you won't reduce it. If it looks great, you'll leave it alone. So don't be tempted to rush too soon into trying to do the details. Break it down into the basic positioning. Basically, when hyperrealists start off, they'll start off with something very similar to the Charles Barks drawing element, where things are carefully mapped out but positioned first before they go into the level of recreating every nuance or eyelash and things coming out. They want to find out that the arc in which they're drawing those eyelashes is actually the right one. Does that make sense? So slow down, take your time, but enjoy that process. It is a part of drawing. It can feel very frustrating if you don't feel as though you're achieving a level, but what's happening is, which is a good indication as well, you've got to take this on board. If you're starting to notice things that aren't quite right, it's good, because you can change them. If you can't see your mistakes and you think your drawing's amazing, and 3 or 4 years down the line you realise actually it's not that great, you needed to have kind of maybe spent a bit more time observing things a little bit better, then that really slows you down. If you can see that his eyes aren't quite right, got to ask yourself the question, what's not right about them? Are they too far up? Are they too far down? Are they too small? Did he do them too big in composition with the size of his head? What's happening with the eye structure? Have you followed where the eye is in relationship to the eye orbit, and the eye nose, etc.? So all of those things are a part of it. You think your trouble is if you had to wait until I was perfectly placed, I would actually never really get started. Well, you say that. You know yourself when you place something down, when you go, oh, it's not quite right, but, and then this is what kicks in. It's not quite right, but it'll do. I'll move on to the next bit. And if you know it's not quite right, just take a step back and go, okay, but where does it need to go? Does it need to go up, down, left, or right? It's simply break it back down. So do give yourself a little break in between the stages, and I mean a little break as in just go for coffee, go for a walk, maybe do set yourself a task of just drawing some loose placements to begin with one day on one portrait, loose placements to begin on another portrait another day, go back to the first drawing the third day, adjust, go back to the second drawing, fourth day, adjust. So you're working in method and function, but you're slowing yourself down but being productive at the same time. Give yourself an hour, give yourself, or if that's too long, give yourself half an hour. Or maybe give yourself 2 half an hours, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. Whichever time suits you best. Maybe you like to draw in blocks of time, then okay, set yourself a block of time today and a block of time tomorrow, or the next day, 2 days apart. And every time you go back to it, you'll see where you can adjust things. You look and you go, oh, it's just not right, it needs to go, but ask yourself a question, what needs to happen? Does this need to move anywhere? This is before we get to the tone and working out the pores and the hair follicles and the wrinkles and things like that. If you don't know where to place the eye, you can't place an eyelash. Does that make sense? I know it sounds obvious, but I've seen people get to the very basics of portraiture like this and go straight into putting eyelashes on, and I'm going, that's not funny. You don't know where he is yet. Can't. Is he smiley? We don't know. Is he a sad person? How they got to change the angle of his eyebrows? How can you put his eyebrows in? So you're all in complete control, and don't be tempted to put too much pressure on yourself and be too hard on yourself. Going, if I had to wait until everything was perfectly placed, you'd never really get started. You have started, because the process of you finding the correct placement of things will give you a more successful drawing. Again, draw lightly and you can adjust, and it's not an issue, because if you make a mark and you go, oh, that mark needs to come down a little bit more, I can rub that one, I can put a little mark where it should go. Now I can see it's definitely not there, it needs to go here. I can put a mark, I can get rid of that mark. If they're light marks, you can adjust them real quick, and it's a small quick adjustments. It's kind of like a sculptural way of drawing and getting rid of all the mistakes out of the way until you get down to the nugget of where your drawing is. And then you can play around with rendering and textures and qualities, and even the process of you doing these like sketchy light drawings to figure out where things are gives you muscle memory on your pencil and how you can articulate it and how you can move it around the surface. I'm going to go on to another little picture. Let's swap this one out for, what do you want to do? Well, I'll leave it up to you. What do you want to do? We've done eyes, nose, mouth, ear. What would you like? I'll let you guys pick. Give you a couple of seconds to have a saliva, my now semi-cold coffee. Brought to you today by I Always and Forever Love You, Head Over Heels. Lovely mug I got from Andrea. Oh. Okay. Let's have some chat today. I really enjoy the chat, by the way. I think it's an important part of the whole experience, is that we get to have a chat and talk about our work. It's not just me telling you what I know and showing off and all the rest of it. It is important that you be a part of this and you ask me the questions and ask me the things you want to know. I learned when you put something down, you can always move it, and that's okay, but you have to put something down first. You have then something to measure from. Yeah, absolutely. You can be hesitant and question yourself, and oh, maybe oh no, you know, I'll go and put a mark. Oh no, doesn't it go there? Oh, down, put a mark down first, and go, oh no, it's not in the right place. It needs to go over that way. As soon as you've done something on the page, you know exactly where it shouldn't be there. It needs to be over there. But then when you put the second mark down, you know that you're closer to it. You can get rid of the first mark. You move on. So we're going to go for the nose and then the mouth, then we're going to work down the face. Okay. So, okay. I'll flick this up. I'll put a link to this book as well. As I said, this book is really expensive. And it's sometimes out of print and it's really hard to get hold of sometimes, but I'll put a link up to it in a minute on where we've got from. Well, I've got a link page on my website and for materials and things, so I'll pop that link up and you'll see it on there. Follow it on Amazon. There is an associated scheme which I have to tell everybody about. Basically, if you buy anything that I advertise on the chat, and I put a link from Amazon on it, if you buy it from Amazon with using that link, I'll get a small percentage of the sale. You don't pay any extra. but that's just a part of like an associate scheme we got with Amazon. It doesn't mean to say I want you to buy that book from me. You can go and shop around. It's just there for purely information. There are a couple of other books on there as well. We did a drawing initially way back in the day from the Figure Drawing Atelier book, and it's a great one for portraiture and figurative drawing, and it's got some elements in there which are still very relevant to drawing faces. I don't know who it was. That suggested that it might have been you, Alex. I'm not sure. Michael. I got this for one of my Father's Day presents. It's a beautiful book, and the simplicity in how they do what looks like a beautifully rendered eye is almost effortless, and you can see some of the structural things in this book of how they break. Where are we? Yeah, how they break. Remember just the simple lines and structures, and basically what I was doing with my little kind of selfie portrait, then blocking bigger shapes out and using the rubber to carve out the spaces, and then refine it a little bit more to where edges are finished, start and stop, and continuing it on and putting some of the tone and textures in, and they have so much expression and life to them. Sometimes if you're doing things and they're rendered too much, they feel very plastic and dead. Sometimes the expressiveness of the pencil and the tone and the grain of the paper and the texture of it coming through adds some life to the drawing, and it's exciting to look at. And that is purely you, the artist, playing with the shapes and expressing it that way. Another interesting one to have a look at. If you are in Northern Ireland, you'll know this name well, and if you go to the Ulster Museum, I think you can pick this book up. It's The Silent Testimony by Colin Davidson. And when you're looking at the structure of those eyes, and you can get a sense of real watery liquidness in the eye, and the lovely reflection on that cornea, and the highlight kick back on the inside of this iris here. Remember what I was saying? The light is this is the highlight on the cornea, travels through the cornea and strikes the iris, so it's lighter here and darker on this side. This side is darker because it's in shadow. There's more light hitting this side of the eyeball because this side of the head is lit. So all of those structural rules are there, but the eye itself is beautifully expressively painted, and he's allowing the paint and the mark making and scribbly, almost like the back of the paintbrush, creating the marks and the textures. You can do that with pencil and graphite as well. You can do that with charcoal. You can do it with pastels. But look at how the eye is actually structured. He's not following that eyelid all the way over. It's not going, this is an eyelid and it starts here and it finishes there, so it must be the same all the way over. It's catching the light here and it stops. Highlight and it stops. How pink and reddish and deep reddish it is, and here it's almost like on fire orange in the center, but it creates a lovely contrast of colors. So all the way through this, how you'll kind of manipulate your gaze in these pictures to concentrate on the eyes, and the faces almost disappear into the background. You look at the edge of this and how that disappears into the background of his works. The deconstruction of it, of the edges. They're still very lifelike, and they still follow the proportions and portraiture of the structure of the face, but these have a softness to them, slightly more detailed, slightly more refined paint marks, as you would do with slightly more refined pencil marks, but the rest of it is much more structural and expressive. An interesting painter to look at, definitely, when you're looking at these portraits. Wonderful stories as well. There's a real sorrowfulness in some of their eyes. You can see almost the structure. We talked about the eye orbit structures. As we all get older, we get to see the structure a little bit more. the life lived in that face is wonderful, and as again how some of the marks are much looser and exaggerated and expressive around the outside. They're much more refined and softer because the eyes are what we connect with. I think when we look at portraiture, I think he's picked up on that beautifully in his paintings. So enough of me waffling. We're going to move down the face, so we're going to the nose. Where did I put that? So I'm looking for a file. Let me see. There's properties. Oh, no, that one. Properties. So again, I'm going to use Charles Bog and whatever his news is. Oh, it's very small. Okay, make that bigger. Interesting thing about Charles Bog's noses is I kind of just didn't. The only one I could find is the tip of the nose. I can't find the entire structure of it. I'm going to take it back down to the structure of my skull. That's my hand, not my skull. There's my skull. This is not perfectly anatomically correct. I mean, this was sculpted by clay. You can see it there just on a stick. The angle of your bridge of your nose is dependent on what genes you've got. Who's your mum and dad? Who had a big nose? Who had a small nose? It can denote a certain ethnicity as well, because this bridge is a structure point of where the cartilage will sit on and continue the shape of the nose. The broader the width, the broader the nose. But basically, it is a hole. Basically, it's a hole, and there's a tiny slither of bone down the center as well. But it's just a triangle. If you literally thought of a kid's quick sketch of a skull, and they do that triangle thing. So this is this is another kid's drawing up here of a skull. So they do this kid's skull, and they do that. You know, if they're cutting out of a pumpkin, Halloween, they do teeth. It is kind of that shape. There's a slight bend of bone in the center, breaking the two air cavities. But this sits on a small outcropping of bone. You can feel it yourself. You press the top of your nose. As it gets broken between the cartilage, and that why people end up having bent noses like this is that breaking the cartilage happens, and the return back into the shape of the skull. These are all very individualistic, depending on our genetics from our parents, basically. How the form of the brow goes, the musculature of the brow muscle. Some people have very prominent brow muscles which make their brows stand out further forward, and maybe somebody who's quite refined and delicate bone structure. So when it comes down to drawing them, again, Charles Bog's example kind of takes you through a walk about the structures of them. When drawing them, again, normally when the kids draw faces, trying to find a cleaner page, part of the page, we'll go up here. When kids draw noses, they get to noses and they do that. You know, even if they're looking straight on, this ends up looking like either an Elton John picture. Oh, yeah, there's Elton John. Nobody has that. If you're looking for a sense of reality, what you do find is the element of a shadow. So when we're drawing a face, so let's see, we've got the two eye sockets either side, and this, if you have a look at it, doesn't start up here, but the cavity starts almost in line with, I would say, where the eyeball would actually come. This gives you that part of, this is the bridge of the nose, but it gives you a width here of the nose. It kind of goes in like an hourglass, and then back out, and then back down to the tip. You can almost draw a circle to give you a body of the bulbous part of the nose. Now that might be slightly narrower or thinner or pointier depending on the person you're drawing, because we've all got a slight difference to our nose. But in general, if you were to go straight up from this point, so not from that point, you need to put the nostrils in to two smaller balls on either side, just as a guide. And if you to go up from the outside of the nostrils and go up, outside of the nostrils and go up, you should come to the corner of the eye. So the space from there out and from there out, you've got to think about a plane. This is actually skin coming down. This is skin coming down. It's like a big slide on that side of how the skin joins the cheek. Skin joins the cheek this way, the skin joins the cheek that way. So what is that space and shape? Nostrils come in and around and under. Now often I've seen people just do holes, but the nostril part comes in. I'll show you my nose. I never thought I'd be doing this morning. There we go, that's better. So I'm pointing at my own nose. Can you see this part here? This is that ball in the center that we're talking about. There. And these will be the two small balls on the outside. Can you see how the nostril comes down, around and back in? It doesn't stop. It doesn't stop there. It comes under and in to the nose. That felt really weird. I've had 2 COVID tests so far, and that felt like the nasal thing. If you've had a COVID test already, they're not that bad, but they are a bit uncomfortable, especially when you do the thing up the nose. So you can see how you can feel how that nostril comes underneath the cavity. You can see how that cavity comes down and follows almost to the tip of the nose here. Now the front, all of this is almost underneath the nose. This is the very tip. Hang on. That's the very tip of my nose that I'm drawing. I'm going to point out on my drawing is there. Tip of my drawing. See, that's that bit, not that bit. So you've got to think in 3 dimensions when you're drawing the face. So that bit, you can see how it curves around this part. I'm trying not to draw my nose because I've got to go to Tesco's later. As it goes under, and you can see the shape of my nose. So look directly at the camera. The circumference of my nose that way. So start to think about that when you're drawing somebody's face. Kind of you notice the three-dimensionality of it. So that moves around that space. This is underneath the nose. This is the tip. How the light strikes, depending on lighting conditions. In lighting conditions that I'm in at the moment, you can see how the light is coming through the window this way, striking this side of my face, but this side of my face is slightly more in shadow. try to reverse back out so you don't have a big look at my face. You don't want to see that. There we are, it's better. So yeah, this is the three-dimensionality of it. If we're looking at shadows, we can normally place the shadow down along the plane of the side of the nose, following the shape and the curvature of that side of the nose there, and you can get a sense of where that nostril still is, because it'll be slightly darker still. When it comes to the philtrum or the gap underneath, one side of the nose will be still highlighted, one side of the nose will be in shadow, and that shadow will kind of cascade across the face until light passes over the top of the nose. This is all the shadow of the nose, and starts striking the side of the cheek. Maybe the side of the cheek might be just about there. So you can see how you can build these things up. So you don't really get a line around this point of where the nose is. What you're drawing is the shadow shape. There is no edge. You know, there is no edge to the shape of the nose. What you can use if you're wearing glasses is the line that the glasses follows to sit on top of the nose and go over the top of the bridge that way. But there is no edge directly on the face itself. What you can see is a soft shadow and how that breaks around the shape and form. And then we come to the philtrum, that little dip underneath your nose. You can't see mine because I've got a moustache, part of my beard. And then some people that's very prominent, and some people it hardly exists. Look at the face you're doing, look at the lighting conditions they're in. Do you need to put that in or not? People sometimes think, alright, every face should have a philtrum. Every face should have a very, very dark shadow on the side of the nose. And that's not true. Look at the face that you're drawing, and what can you see? Draw that. The proportions of them, as we said earlier, if you take it from the central line where the eyes are and go halfway down between that line and the bottom of the chin, you will get the nose, and that'll help you find the structure of or at least positioning of it. How wide the nose is will be roughly one eye width apart, because it'll, if you came straight up, you'll come to the corner of each eye anyway, so it should be the width of one eye. In general, you can actually fit 5 eye widths across the face, so the space here to the space here should be another eye width, the space here and space here should be another eye width. So there are 5 eye widths apart, 5 eye widths across the shape of the face. But that's if somebody's looking directly straight at you and have a very generic face. And people don't normally stand like that. You know, people tend to lean to one side, so you might only get 4.5. Do you know what I mean? So don't assume proportions are law. They're a guide, and they're a guide to what you can physically see and how you can approach your subject matter, and best appropriate some of the guidelines into drawing the portrait that you want to draw. I think this picture on my camera, it seems to be switching itself off on a more regular basis now, quicker and quicker. I can't figure out for the life of me what causes it. So if anybody in technical land world knows what that is in YouTube world, and you know why this switches itself off, I'd be very happy if you could let me know. Right, there's live view. I said okay at that. I'll click on this. So I'm talking to myself as I there we are. Okay. Rejig things around. So hopefully that helps with the nose as well. Again, when you're looking at, you're coming at the top of the lip here, which will take us onto the mouth next, I suppose. how far that is actually set back from the tip of the nose. People often then just do it in a straight line going straight down from here. They start putting lips here and bottom lip and then chin, and it makes a face like very sort of flat. And it's not, remember there's a structure to it, so you can start to see, if I spin my head around, and I'll take it back down to have a look at him in a second. It is a him, by the way, because he has a square jaw at the back. There we go. You can start to see how far back that is actually set. It doesn't go down in a straight line from the tip of his nose. It goes back down at a slight angle. Okay, and you can start to see the space and the musculature of how the muscles split across the face and how they wrap around the muscle that goes underneath this one. This one comes over the top. The muscles that come down behind this one. This is an interesting muscle as well, something to take a note of when you're doing portraiture. This is the muscle that helps you chew, and it goes up the side of your head and it goes down behind this part of your eye socket here, down past this part of your cheekbone, and attaches itself to the jaw so you can bite. And if you chew and put your hand on the side of your head, you can actually see in my hand, you can actually see part of the muscle moving this up as I bite down, like that. That's your basically how you're able to chew. That all connects down to the jaw. So if you've got somebody, you know, biting a steak, it's going to change the positioning of some of those muscles. It's going to make them contract and bulge out a little bit. So you got to think of how faces move. Like your jaw can move around, your top jaw can't. You know, your cheeks are a fixed position. You can't suddenly start moving cheeks up and down. You can smile with muscles, but the bone structure underneath doesn't move. So remember I was saying about the eyebrows. The eyebrows can move around on top of the form, but the physicality of the skull can't shift around. It's a fixed thing. The only thing that can move is your jaw on your, you know, on your skull, or the mandible as you call it. So hopefully that helps a little bit, giving you guidance as to how the bone structures work with the nose. So that I put some sort of cartilage in on one side, and on the other side you can see the cavity there, what the skeletal part of the skull would look like. Hopefully that gives you a bit of a tip. And then obviously we can come down here to the philtrum, the musculature going into the muscle of the lip. The lip is a muscle, and how many muscles are attached to that. I mean, this is a very basic version of musculature. You can go in and study this and see all the nuances and stuff. If it helps you understand how faces move, it can be a good thing. But as a basis, it kind of really helps just understand a little bit of the anatomy of a face and how that works. Okay, coming down to the mouth is the next bit, I think. What is the model again? This one I made. I went to the Titanic Creative Suite in Belfast, and they run different courses to do with prosthetics, model making, wig making for movies. A lot to do with kind of movie techniques and things like that. But they had a sculpture course, and the guy who taught this did an awful lot of stuff on Lord of the Rings, and he's an amazing sculptor. I'm terrible with names. Something Martin. I'm really sorry if I've forgotten his name, because he's world renowned as well. I'm just awful with names. It was absolutely brilliant. Great 2 days. We used a thing called wetter clay, which is a clay mixed with an oil. I didn't fire it. It's not been fired. I could fire it if I wanted to, but I just kind of like him in his raw state. He's quite delicate. If you poked around it too much, it would break. There's a lot of clay in there. It's quite solidly on that stick. I could eventually prise it off. It's basically on a stick. I wrapped down loads of paper, and then we just formed large blobs of clay and broke it down into basic shapes, and then broke that shape down into exactly how we draw. Broke that big ball of shape down, where the eyes would go around the center. Put little markers, calipers, and how wide to the top of the head and things like that. And that's how we started to build the structures down. And then poking my thumb right into the clay to get the depth of where the eyes, and then realizing how far into the skull the eye sockets actually go, really helps you tune your eye when you're looking at things. You understand what it is physically you're looking at depth wise, because you've got a physicality of it. You can buy these skulls on eBay and Amazon stuff. You can buy real ones as well, but they cost a fortune. But you can buy good replicas for a couple of £100, or you can do a course for a couple of £100 and have your own to take home with you. Because it was good fun as well. Met some really nice people that day. Really enjoyed myself. So yeah, why not have a go at making your own? Oh, you see, my camera model. I just realised what you meant, Alex. I went into what a 10-minute spiel about making the head. You actually meant my camera. It is a 700D EOS Canon. It's a slightly older version of some of the newer DSLRs you can get, and some of the mirrorless ones now don't seem to have this problem. It's got a thing where you just plug the battery straight into it's like a charger, but it's like a fake battery where it's plugged in, so it can be constantly on all the time, so the battery doesn't run out. Because the batteries would only last, I'd say, about 45 minutes doing something like this. So yeah, sorry about that. She went a bit of a rant about modelling the head. I think what you meant was my camera model. Sorry. I should pay attention more, shouldn't I? Yeah. So let's get on to the mouth. So I think we're happy enough with the nose. Let me see if we can swap this one over. So again, these are all elements from the Charles Bargue drawing course. This is another one. Let's see if we'll make it a little bit bigger for you. Again, these are very stylized. They're very sort of Greek, Roman model, because they would have referenced them in drawings, and they're an easy one to study. You can see how he's broken that drawing down initially from just a line drawing with some very simple shading going on in the first drawing, to something that's slightly softer, more complex, and then something that's more fully rendered, where he's looking at light from dark to very light and all the lovely tones in between. But basically, when you're drawing a mouth, so if I leave the model for the moment and swing you back up over to this, if we continue this kind of drawing down, so say for example we had, that's where the corner of the eye is, this is where the corner of the eye is, that one. So the eye would be that width apart. Halfway in between there, if you to go right down, and this is if you're looking straight on at somebody, you'll reach the corner of the mouth, and it won't be in line with the top lip, it'll be further down, normally further down, because depending on what you're doing with the mouth, if you're smiling, if it's just a very blank face and it's just got its mouth at rest, something my mouth doesn't do very often. But if it's just a mouth at rest, it can't be in line with the top of the lip. It's going to be a bit further down. So there's a fall away from where the philtrum is, and a fall away from that point to this point. When I mean fall away, it goes from there to this point, which is further down the facial plane. So again, corner of the eye, 1 y width apart. Center of the eye will be about there, coming down. That's roughly where the corner of the mouth is going to be. Now, it doesn't mean to say the lips have to go from there to there. What can happen is you can get a fold of skin. It can kind of fold around depending on how full the lips are. Can depend on how far you want this fold to be. So if they're very thin lips, maybe that fold isn't as great. You know, or very full and round lips, maybe it's a little bit further down. There's a bit of a variation. And as we come out, there's a shape to it. Remember, you're looking at a mouth barrel. The mouth goes around the shape of the skull. It doesn't sit flat. Although we can draw a generic line across, this is a line. It's a bit of an illusion because if I go back down to the skull, let's swing it down this way. Oh, I'll zoom out a bit. You can see how far the mouth actually comes around to this point here. This is the corner of the mouth. But as I move my finger or pencil around the front and around the other side, you can see the travel of the curvature of that. It's called the mouth barrel. It's not on the flat. When we draw it on a page, it looks like a straight line, but you've got to imagine that it goes from this side of the face right around the front of the teeth and back around this side of the face. It's on a curved base. And often people forget that and they just draw it flat, and it's not, it's curved. So you got to think that in the corners it's going to be darker as it starts to come around the front. If this is light, this whole part of the mouth is going to be light. There might be a small lip there. It comes up. This might not be a perfectly straight line. As it comes down this side, it's going to be definitely darker. It won't necessarily have a line going around it like this, like a lip liner. It's one piece of skin that's slightly discolored going into another bit of skin, so the transition between this point and that point might be a little bit fluffy, so it might be softer. So you might put a small guideline down there, but when you start to blend this in together, it might become softer. You might get elements of hinting at some of the, it's very kind of what's the word, you can see some of the filaments of the lip, kind of the muscular filaments, hinting at the structure of the mouth. If that line's too harsh, take it away. It might be more sculpted in other areas, which might be around the philtrum. Depending on the style of face that you're looking at, some people have very structural lips, some people have lips that are kind of hardly are there almost, you know, they're just a small hint. But the basic shape of them will follow that form of the mouth, which is on the barrel. It's not a straight line. Although it appears a straight line in your picture, you've got to give the illusion that it is a curved space. It's going from back here all the way around and going back on the other side of the skull. When it comes to the bottom lip, obviously you can play with elements of maybe little parts of the lip which might open and close a little bit. This might reveal slightly more in shadow. I'm just thinking of how we shadowed this, how we've lit it. It's quite stark, and I'm kind of playing along with the same kind of guidelines. So you can sort of see how it's dark on this side. If this is going to catch light, because it's going to be more prominent, so it's going to be darker on that side. This is the lit. That side of the mouth is going to catch the light. Yeah, that side of the mouth is going to catch the light, but this side of the philtrum is going to catch the light because it's kind of in a dip, and then this side of the mouth is going to be dark, so it comes down. So when we look at the underside of the mouth, now it's very rare that you'd have a very, very thick top lip and a very, very thin bottom lip. They kind of work in parity with each other. So I'm going to give them the same sort of thickness of the bottom lip as I've got at the top, but I don't need to draw as much in. This is going to be roughly in light, and maybe it's going to get a little bit darker on this side. It doesn't normally go to the very edge. It normally stops and slowly blends into the corner of the mouth. As you can see on Charles Boggs' drawing there, the bottom of the lip is a lot softer sculpturally than the top of the lip, so you don't get to see sharper edges as much. Where you do get to see sharper edge is kind of maybe the fold of the bottom of the lip just underneath here. Oh, a sec, I'm going to swap you back to the other camera. Desiree, you're very welcome. I was just reading your comment there. Thank you very much. I'll swap you back to the... I don't know how much of that you were catching because I realised I didn't have a camera in the right place. Yeah. So I got back. I'll go back over that, Desiree. Sorry, I think I have to go back over it because nobody saw it. So where I was talking about the structure of the mouth going one side to the other side, remember it comes around the face. That this part's going to be in shadow because the light's coming in from this direction. This is going to be in light. This is probably going to be a lighter bit because it sits out further. This part's going to be in dark because it goes back into the face. At the bottom of the lip, you're not necessarily going to get an edge as structurally strong as the top lip. Where you will get it is just the very base where this bottom lip folds over and comes back into the chin, and it normally stops before the corner of the mouth. It curves up and in a little bit sooner than that. So you got to think that if this is dark in here, how that's going to move over the light into the dark. So it's darker here, here, moves over, it gets lighter into dark. So you can build up a sense of reality relatively quickly by manipulating the shape of the lip. Think about it. Run your finger across your lip. Look at your own lips, how they fold, how they go into the corners, how the corners of your bottom lip are much further in than the corner of your top lip here, and how further back they are when you move your hand around your top of your face. You see an awful lot of artists working these things out structurally about going, where is my cheek? Oh, that's the shape of my cheek. You know, start to feel your own face and how that kind of physically moves. That'll help you visually get a construct of how faces work. So when you're drawing them, you kind of go, oh, that's that part of the cheekbone, or oh yeah, that's where the corner of the mouth goes back here. I put mine too kind of flat and thin. It needs to be deeper. And you go back in and you refine it. And it helps you build up a memory knowledge or memory bank of the physicality of a face. So I'm hoping that's working out for you. I see I'm about 10 past 1 already. I hope that's worked for you today, covering some of these little elements. I think when I'm drawing a face of somebody, these things start to make better context. Rather than just drawing an eyes, nose, and mouth, you realise every eyes, nose, and mouth is completely different, and that's what makes up the portrait. You know, that's what gives you the individuality that we're looking for and the positioning of them. And a lot of it is just literally the proportions of that face. The generic structures that we were talking about before, too far in, of, you know, this is the size of the head, therefore this is where the eyes go, and this is where the nose goes, and this is where the mouth goes, is okay, but we're not androids. And we all have slightly idiosyncratic elements to our faces anyway. We chew on different sides of our face. You know, we have predominantly, we'll chew more on this side. You develop more musculature around one side of the face. You might have one eye that's visually stronger than the other eye, therefore the other eye will squint a little bit, so it develops muscles and slightly different. So lots of elements go to make our faces slightly different, so they're not purely symmetrical. Whereas if you took that kind of image and rule based system, we would be very symmetrical, and the fact of the matter is we're not. I'm actually slightly hairier on one side of my face than I am on the other side of my face for some reason. I don't know why. My eyesight makes me squint in a certain way, which has developed sort of my eyebrows and my forehead. Genetically, we have a very wrinkled furrowed brow in our family. So there could be a hereditary genetic connotations to your face. I have what we call the Boyd nose, which is a very kind of generic round nose, whereas my mum had what they called a Parson's nose, because she was a parson. But the Parson's nose was slightly more structural, shall we say. She didn't have a massive nose. So all of these things have a different play on portraiture. So that when people say, how do you draw an eye? There isn't one way of drawing eye. There are thousands of ways of drawing eye. What I'm going to do is, just in the chat, I will put up a quick link of the link page on my website. The reason why I'm doing that is it's got a link to the Charles Bagg drawing book. And it's got a few other links as well to other books of portraiture. Well worth checking out. So the first thing you get is the Art and Home, and a couple of links to sort of other pieces. And but I think it's about the 6th book down. It's a Charles Bagg drawing book. At the minute, I think you can get about, it's nearly 50 quid, so it's quite expensive. But there are other books on there as well. There is a great one of Anatomy for Artists, very detailed book. It's quite an old illustrations. There are, I think it's another one by Julia Aristides, which is the Figure Drawing Atelier book. Now, it doesn't necessarily tell you how to draw a face, but there's some brilliant drawings of faces in it. She's got a great one on portraiture as well, which is well worth checking out. So yeah, I'll put that link up for you, which you can go and check out at your leisure. As I say, you don't have to buy it from using those links. You can go and find your own links and your own books and your own prices elsewhere. It's just to help you kind of have a look to see what it is. So yeah, I will put that up in the chat bar right now. Hopefully that helps. There we go. Oh no, I didn't. I forgot to press copy. Why is that come up there? Hang on a second, just let me reload that, because yeah, there it is. sometimes when you press copy and paste, because I was sharing it this morning when we were going live and I hadn't changed it over, it would just take you back to this chat again, and that'd be really quite frustrating. So I'll paste that in there. There we go. So that link should take you to that. Check it out, have a look at it. You might be able to get some of the plates even online for free, but there's nothing better than having the book right beside you, and you switch off the technology and you just draw. The plates themselves help you stage by stage develop your drawing. They're used in the Atelier system for a reason. They've been used for hundreds of years. They're quite good at testing your skill level and getting the accuracy of what you're recording. You can start to see when things don't line up. Whereas if you're drawing a face from life, you've got a bit of flexibility and a bit of artistic freedom to, you know, get around. But the plates are pretty good at keeping the discipline and structure of observation you're drawing. So hopefully that helps. Alex and Mo, pleasure to be there. Really enjoyed the class this week. Thanks again. Learnt loads. Brilliant. Good. Thank you, Angela. Greatly covered a lot there. Always a balance between following some principles without losing the freedom of drawing and really enjoying it. Absolutely. And thank you again, Michael. It's very kind of you to send that gift through. I really do appreciate it. And I'm going shopping now. And buy some more toys. It's great. So yeah, if there's anything you want me to cover, anything you want to talk about at all regarding the art world and what you want to draw, why you're drawing it, it could be the concepts, ideas, how you develop your ideas for your artwork, you let me know. You don't have to answer it right now. You can have a muse about it and drop a little message into the chat. More than happy. Or send me a private message on Facebook, my Lee Boyd Artist page. More than happy to do anything. So let me know. And next week what we're doing is another portrait. So we're carrying on. We've got 3 portraits there. The next person I'm drawing is Leslie. And yeah, so if you're interested in being involved, send me a little picture. It has to be a quick selfie. Something you're happy with, something you like, and we'll put that into the mix as well. It'll be a pleasure. Okay guys, enjoy the rest of your day. I'm going to go off shopping as I normally do, and see you again next week, next Saturday, 11 o'clock GMT. Alright, bye. I can't find the off button. That was hilarious. How many weeks we've done this? I'm suddenly looking at the wrong screen going, I can't stop the broadcast. So yeah, there's a slight delay on me actually disappearing at the minute. So sorry about that. I mean, you can just tell I'm not really professional at doing this. I'm more of the art